Thank you. Hello everyone, so it's great to be here in Brighton. I'm a big fan of Brighton. So when I was 21, I voluntarily threw myself out of a perfectly good aeroplane for the first time. That 60 seconds of adrenaline, that 60 seconds of sheer terror completely changed the course of my life forever. Not only was I blown away by the experience, I was also blown away that people were actually getting paid to jump out of perfectly good aeroplanes every day of the year. And my careers advisor at school hadn't mentioned this to me. So I decided there and then that that was something I wanted to do. I wanted to get paid to jump out of planes, and I wanted to be a free-fall camera flyer. So I turned that rather far-fetched goal into a reality, and I got my dream job. And we were jumping up to 10 times a day, every day. That was my job. Now, looking back on that, on reflection, I like to think of this as the boldness of youth, because I knew nothing about skydiving, I knew nothing about filming, and I knew nobody in New Zealand. But none of that mattered, because I knew I could learn those skills. And that's exactly what I did. And I've tried to sort of carry this positive mindset on going forward in my life. I've just turned 40, and the last 19 years have had some pretty incredible adventures in them. So 10 years ago, I got sponsored to take part in an exciting world-first expedition, and I became the first woman to skydive Everest. And I actually fell out of the plane, but that's a whole new story. So that picture there is quite a stressful situation right there. So for me, journeys and adventures, I'm very passionate about journeys and adventures with purpose. So I now use my adventures as a platform to talk about social and environmental issues. Last year, I summited Mount Everest, and I got to sit on the summit of Everest with just myself and my climbing partner for half an hour. No one sits on the summit of Everest for half an hour, and with a blue sky and a beautiful view. But the reason I climbed Everest was to raise awareness and funds for wildlife conservation and for my charity, How Many Elephants? So to date, I've raised over £300,000 for various charities and initiatives through my adventures. Thank you. But today, I'm going to talk about an adventure of a different kind. Sorry, clicker's not working. So 5 years ago, I moved to Brighton, and I studied for a master's in sustainable design at the University of Brighton. And I came here to study a material called vegetable ivory, which I've worked with for over a decade, and I'm very passionate about it. It's a nut from a palm tree from the South American rainforests, and it's a beautiful and robust material, and it's almost identical in colour and texture to elephant ivory. So this is what started my research into the African elephant crisis. That was 5 years ago, and I haven't stopped. I've embarked on an incredible journey where I've founded a charity, How Many Elephants, to raise awareness of the crisis using art, design, and creativity. So as a designer and maker, I built this showpiece necklace, which is made up of 96 elephant representations cut in vegetable ivory. And this is to show the daily poaching rate in Africa. So the whole thinking behind this piece is using design to bridge the gap between scientific data and human connection. I've weaved a narrative into the piece with one elephant hand cut in brass, because the poacher's bullet shells are commonly made from brass. And one elephant is facing the other way to say that this crisis can still be turned around and that the elephants aren't extinct yet. But at the current poaching rates, the African elephant in the wild will be extinct in the next 10 years, which is a pretty shocking thought. This necklace has won 5 awards so far, And to accompany my necklace is my hard-hitting exhibition, which showcases 35,000 elephants on a wall. It's a pretty shocking sight, and this is the annual death toll in Africa currently. So I was thinking with this piece, it's almost impossible, it is impossible for us to know what 35,000 of anything looks like. It's too big a figure. So my work is just showing you what does 35,000 elephants look like. Each square represents one day of poaching in Africa. To actually see and connect with this data visually is very impactful. I've purposely avoided using gruesome images of mutilated elephants in order to shock, as I believe we've become desensitized to that approach. My work's also not about assigning blame or pointing the finger at anyone. It's about showing the sheer scale of the poaching crisis. So this is my most recent exhibition, and it's a striking floor-to-ceiling display in a chapel. And I was able to fit 100,000 elephants, or elephant representations, in this chapel, which is about 3 years' worth of poaching. Now, during this time, I had over 1,000 school children visit my exhibition and do workshops with myself. So when I came to do my master's, on the first day, my tutor, who's an amazing and very inspiring man, Professor Jonathan Chapman, said to us, all of us, if you're here to save the world, you're on the wrong course. But if you're here to make a difference and make a positive contribution in the right direction, then you're absolutely in the right place. And these words have rung around in my head ever since. So with these children, even if I can instill a new thought in some of their minds or change a few hearts and perspectives, then I see that is making a difference. These young minds are the actionable change makers of tomorrow. And that's an audience I'm very interested in talking more to. So each child was given an elephant to colour in as part of my global visual petition. And the thinking behind my petition was I'm trying to replace a traditional signature on a piece of paper. I'm trying to get hundreds of thousands of these elephant artworks from all over the world, coloured in and uploaded to #HowManyElephants. And it's not just for children, adults also are taking part. And if you'd like to take part in my petition, you can download a template on my website at howmanyelephants.com. So what am I petitioning for? I'm petitioning for 1% of the profits from the luxury travel market in Africa, the safaris, etc. If 1% of the profits were distributed to the local communities and the villages backing onto the national parks, I think this would have a very profound effect. Many of these communities see no benefit from the tourism and no benefit from the animals alive. This needs to change. The children then took their elephant artworks back to their schools and had their own exhibitions. So this kept the message being spread amongst their peers, their parents, and their teachers. But what I noticed was the children were taking ownership of the artwork because it was theirs. And they got pretty inspired by all of this. And this one school in particular had 168 elephant artworks on display in their foyer. And as beautiful as the artworks were, those 168 elephants represented less than 2 days of poaching. So it was pretty impactful to see, especially for the children. So this year I got invited to speak at 2 wildlife conservation conferences in Cape Town. And I knew while I was over there, I couldn't go to South Africa and not pay a visit to these ladies. These are the Black Mambas. They're an all-female frontline anti-poaching team. Now, I've been advocating their work for a long time, and I've been raising money for them through my charity. So far, I've raised £5,000 for them, which has bought them a new patrol vehicle. But I wanted to go and see the work that they were doing on the ground. I wanted to see where the money was going to be spent, future money that I raised for them. And I'm also making a film about their work. So they patrol large areas, and the poaching numbers have dropped right down since their inception. They're the eyes and the ears on the ground. They're not armed, they just have pepper spray and handcuffs. So a little girl said to me in one of the schools, "But how do they spray the pepper spray?" And I said, "What do you mean, how do they spray the pepper spray?" And she said, "Well, if they're unarmed, they don't have arms." So I just want to clarify, the Black Mambas have arms, they just don't carry guns. And this is a very conscious decision too. So one of my aims for hanging out with the Black Mambas and immersing myself, I was with them for about 3 weeks. One of my aims was to glean intimate insight into what drives and motivates these women to do the work that they do. Not only are they bravely and courageously working on the front line, they're also inspiring role models, protectors, educators, and beacons of hope in their communities and beyond. But the one thing that struck me about these women was the camaraderie between them and the pride with which they wore these uniforms. Becoming a Black Mamba has empowered them to improve their lives and those in their communities. Becoming a Black Mamba has taught them skills, it's given them courage, and it's given them an identity. So I was fortunate enough to observe them in their daily work. We'd go out on morning patrols and night patrols, sometimes walking up to 20 kilometers, patrolling the fence lines, checking for incursions, dismantling snares, and monitoring the wildlife. I literally had to pinch myself to think, I'm not on a paid safari trip here, I'm out with the Black Mambas, and having read so much about them and advocated their work so much, that was a real privilege in my mind. They're also great educators. They go into the schools and they have over 800 children enrolled on their Bush Babies program. And they're trying to teach these children to respect the wildlife, but also show them that there's a different way than poaching. So what's next? I'm taking my exhibition to China next year, to the universities in Shanghai, Beijing, and Hong Kong. And I'm also trying to hike the Great Wall of China in its entirety of 3,000 miles, not only for the adventure, but to carry out research into rural China, into the rural communities. How does elephant ivory fit into their culture, into their deep-rooted traditions and beliefs? And my hunch is it probably doesn't fit in at all because of the price tag on it. It's probably a small group of very wealthy individuals that still desire elephant ivory or rhino horn. But I don't know that, so I want to go and find out and carry out my own primary research. Airports. I'm trying to get my exhibition into airports all over the world. I think this will be really impactful when you're walking down a travelator to walk past my 18-meter-long infographic of 35,000 elephants. So if anyone in the audience has links with in the airport industry, please do come and see me. So there's lots of amazing initiatives and campaigns and charities out there, but what I found is a lot of them are working in isolation. And I think that's a real shame, because we're all working for a common goal, to protect the elephants. So I'm reaching out to NGOs, to governments, to schools, and to passionate individuals. If you're sitting in the audience now thinking, you know, I want to help, I want to make a difference, but I don't know how. I'm not saying I have all the answers, because I don't, but I'm open to chatting, and I'm also open to people volunteering more than money. So as much as we like financial donations, it's also really valuable when people donate their time and their skills. So why do I do all this? In one word, passion. I'm very, very passionate about the journey that I'm on. I'm passionate about using art and design as a powerful communication tool. I'm passionate about raising awareness of the African elephant crisis. And I'm passionate about raising funds through my adventures, through my speaking. Also have a stationery collection that I sell, amongst other things, to raise money for my charity. Passion is contagious. People buy into passion. And I believe collective passion has the power to make a change in this world. So I'm calling all elephant lovers, all wildlife lovers, artists, designers, writers, politicians, journalists, and change makers who dare to say, I can make a change in this world. Join me and let's stand up for elephants together. Thank you.